I did not speak for the gods. I spoke for the silence that men brought with them. They climbed the slopes of Parnassus with dust on their tongues and coins in their hands. Kings and beggars, generals and lovers, all asking the same question in different costumes. Tell me that what I want is destiny. They called me Pythia, as if a name could hold a furnace. I learned early that faith is not a light. It is a heat that softens iron, then bends it. The temple listens better than people do. Marble pretends to be cold, but it remembers every footstep. Smoke writes in the air what no scribe can copy. Below us, the earth exhales through hidden mouths. They call them vapors, signs, chemistry. Name it what you like. Truth has always needed a costume to be tolerated. They placed laurel in my hands and a tripod beneath me, as if 3 legs could steady a world that refuses balance. The priest pressed questions into my palm, each one shaped like a blade. Will the war be just? Will the voyage return? No one asked. What is a just man? No one asked. Where is home? They wanted answers with a taste of permission. I learned the discipline of fracture, a voice that is half whisper and half wind, enough clarity to be craved, enough fog to be obeyed. If I had spoken plainly, I would have been dismissed. If I had refused to speak, I would have been destroyed. Between those 2 deaths, I found a language more faithful than honesty. I watched empires kneel without bending. A general enters, smelling of iron and rain, and leaves convinced that the gods prefer his flag. A city offers gold for a favorable omen and receives a favorable debt. Sometimes I envy the stones. They bear weight without making promises. Do you know what it costs to become an echo? You make a home in other people's throats. You dress your doubt in their certainty and pray the seam will hold. When the laurel touched my lips, I felt the leaf trembling, perhaps from the wind, perhaps from me. The oracle learns humility from plants. The powerful rarely do. There are days when the earth below the Adyton hums like a beehive. The sound collects in my bones and I become porous. I do not hear Zeus or Apollo. I hear footsteps assembling into history. The god is not a person. The god is the permission that people need to move. If I sound unkind, forgive me. I have pitied more men than I have judged. Fear wears fine sandals when it comes to Delphi. It bows, it donates, it rehearses piety, then begs for exemption. They ask the god for victory. I ask the god for mercy, the kind that keeps a hand from sealing its own fate. I was taught to breathe until the world softened. Inhale the resin, exhale the answer. My master said, give them doors, not walls. So I learned to shape sentences with hinges. Let them open toward wisdom, or toward the ruin they already chose. And when the procession departs and the courtyard empties, the temple grows honest again. The braziers sigh, the marble cools, the mountains return to their work of being inevitable. I wash my hands in a bronze basin and watch the water forget me. The priest asks if the god was generous. I say the god was exact. I did not speak for the gods. I spoke so that men would hear the edges of their own voices. A thin line divides prophecy from permission. Men come to Delphi to move the line, closer to their desire, farther from their doubt. A king once arrived with lions sewn on his cloak and mercy stitched somewhere no one could see. He asked me if the war would be righteous. I told him the sea would bless his oars if his dead forgave him. He smiled as if the ocean were an accomplice. He left convinced the gods had signed his orders. The gods had only signed the tide. Another came with a lover, hiding in his silence. He asked if the journey would return him safely. I answered, The road keeps what you offer it. He promised the road his caution and gave it his impatience. When he returned, it was on other people's shoulders. They called my words a riddle. I called them a scale. I learned to measure where a man sets his weight. Some rest on truth, and it holds. Some rest on fear, and it cracks. The priest once asked me, "Do you believe what you say?" I said, "I believe what they hear." He frowned as if belief were a coin, and I had failed to mint it. I have seen empires bargain with thunder. They bring bronze and barley and blood and expect the sky to negotiate. But the sky is older than treaties. It accepts the offering and keeps the storm. The world is not persuaded by noise, it is persuaded by patience. Marble taught me that. Laurel taught me that. Suffering taught me that most of all. When the earth trembles under the Adyton, people call it a sign. When a woman trembles, they call it hysteria. I prefer the word threshold. There is a door between the breath and its meaning. I learned to stand in it, 1 foot in ash, 1 foot in snow, until those who wanted certainty mistook it for wisdom. Sometimes I envy the river below the sacred way. It refuses to remember the names that fall into it. Kings, beggars, generals, lovers. Water polishes them into stones and carries them all as if they weighed the same. They ask me if the gods speak. I tell them the gods are not voices, the gods are consequences. Speak if you must, but know this. Every sentence is a path, and every path ends in a valuation of courage, of loyalty, of truth. Not all who ask for light welcome what it shows. I have been called a mask and a mouth. I am neither. I am a pause in which other people finally hear themselves. If my words cut, it is because the truth has edges, and I did not wrap them in velvet. If my words soothe, it is because some wounds are made of noise, and quiet is the only salve. A boy once stole a coal from the brazier to keep his mother warm. They dragged him to the steps and demanded a verdict. The priests looked to me. I said, "The God accepts what is given to the cold." They called it mercy. I called it arithmetic. Fire belongs where life shivers. Do you see my hands? Ink stains in the lines, resin in the nails. I am not a miracle. I am a worker in a factory of belief. I sweep the floor after revelations and stack the chairs of faith when processions end. The holy is not a spectacle, it is maintenance. Men leave Delphi satisfied when they can tell a story in which the gods agree with them. I leave Delphi satisfied when a man discovers a question he cannot bear to tell a lie to. This is the only victory I am allowed. And when night lowers its blue lid over Parnassus, I count the lamps along the sacred way. Each has a different hunger. I pray for the smallest ones first. When people speak of the oracle, they imagine smoke, riddles, and gods whispering through me. But truth does not whisper, it echoes. And echoes do not belong to anyone. Once, a Spartan general came to me with blood on his hands and victory in his mouth. He asked if the god would bless his next campaign. I looked at him and said, "Only the innocent can carry divine favor without it burning their palms." He laughed, certain that I meant his enemies were damned. Perhaps I did, perhaps not. The words belonged to the silence after him. Another time, a philosopher came, one who thought more than he prayed. He asked not about victory or wealth, but about meaning. He said, "If the gods know everything, why do they test us?" I told him, "The gods do not test you. They give you mirrors and call them choices." He stared at me long after I stopped speaking. I think he saw himself, not the divine. That is how most revelations begin, with disappointment. I have learned that prophecy is not about the future. It is about memory disguised as foresight. Every omen is a reflection, not of what will be, but of what has already begun. The cracks in a city's wall start in the hearts of its rulers. The storms at sea start in the breath of men who curse the wind. To predict is to remember before others do. Sometimes I wonder if the gods envy us. We forget so easily. We believe so deeply. We make errors they cannot afford to make. Maybe that is why they watch, not to judge, but to learn, to see how faith survives the absence of proof. A priest once told me I spoke as if I had seen too much. I told him seeing is not the burden, remembering is. The past is heavier than prophecy because it cannot be changed. When I close my eyes, I still see those who came to me broken, hoping to be mended by a sentence. Some I healed, some I shattered. Both called it destiny. I have felt the tremor of power under my fingertips. To be believed is the closest thing to being divine. But divinity, like wine, ferments. It sweetens the first few times you taste it. Then it begins to rot the tongue. And still, every morning, I wake to the sound of the mountain breathing. Parnassus exhales fog and memories, and I remember who I am. A mouth carved out of stone, speaking for a silence that will outlive me. When I am gone, the priest will find another girl. She will sit where I sat, breathe what I breathed, and they will call her chosen. The gods will not notice. The mountain will. The mountain remembers. There will come a day when the temple cracks, when the marble grows tired of holding up heaven, and the air grows still because no one is left to ask questions. They will call it an ending. I will call it a pause. The earth beneath Delphi is alive, restless, thoughtful, cruel. It hums like a creature that knows secrets too old for speech. Sometimes, when the vapors rise, I wonder if it remembers me. A trembling mouth repeating other people's desires, a vessel mistaking echoes for divinity. The priest will write my words in wax tablets. The kings will carve them into stone, but stone is slower than memory, and memory always rewrites what it cannot bear to keep. Every empire that sought my blessing now lies beneath the dust it once commanded. I have outlived their questions, and that is both a miracle and a curse. Once, when I was young, I thought truth was like fire, pure, cleansing, inevitable. Now I know it behaves more like smoke. It fills the room, stains the ceiling, and disappears the moment someone opens a window. The gods never spoke to me, not once. It was always the mountain, breathing, shifting, watching through its endless patience. It does not care for prayers or gold. It only listens to weight of steps, of words, of guilt. And perhaps that is the truest God of all, the one that listens but never promises. If anyone ever stands where I have stood, I hope she learns what I learned too late. That prophecy is not a voice, but an ear. That the divine is not what answers, but what remains after everything has been asked. When my time comes, they will say I returned to the earth, that Apollo took me back into his breath. Let them say it. I will be where I have always been, between silence and the noise it forgives. Somewhere, a king will still be waiting for approval. A soldier will still believe the gods march with him. A lover will still promise forever in a temple that does not listen. And the mountain will still exhale. And the wind will still carry my voice, not because it remembers me, but because it cannot stop moving. I did not speak for the gods. I spoke for the silence they left behind.